Okay, before the break, we were looking at the some MySQL stuff. Hopefully it was a review for most of you all. If you haven't seen it before, the reading assignment for this week has a good thorough coverage of SQL. As soon as I replaced that, because I uploaded it to the files folder in the wrong course, and I still had access. So when I tested the links, it worked fine because I had access to my other course. But I discovered today that you all do not have access to my other course. So that test didn't, I'm gonna have to keep that in mind. So I figured out which course I uploaded them to, or go back or get new ones up there. I will get new ones up there soon. Hopefully that was a review, the basics of relational databases, and yeah, just kind of a basic pass. So now we need to see how to connect our Java application to that, because that is a very important one in Java. I know some of y'all had me in a Python course last spring, or then again over the summer. The summer one was online, so the extra pieces were just videos I stuck in the announcement. It's like, yeah, this we can do better coverage than this. But they're using a relational database or whatever was just kind of personal choice, because with Python we're making small desktop applications generally. With Java, Java is for big things. The example I like, y'all heard me go to it many times this semester. Since we're near Louisville, I think a couple of y'all might be from elsewhere in the state. But here in Louisville, one rather large employer is the Humana's home office is here, and the UPS World Hub is here. So that's those companies have big databases. Humana, 50,000 employees and 10 million customers. That's a huge database. That's the size application that Java is used to make enterprise scale stuff for. Or the UPS World Hub. That's a massive database of every package that UPS is currently shipping and which employees are involved in that shipping process. Very large scale databases and the application. That's the sort of applications that Java is typically used for in the world. So big things. And big things like that also include a big paycheck. Y'all probably already are well aware of that. That's why you chose Java instead of the easier Python course. Or several people in here already had the easier Python course instead of Java. Because it's for making really big things, and along with really big things come really big paychecks. Which is why we come to school. So we're going to kind of review databases. So tying into a large database is, it's not just a personal preference in Java like it was in the Python course. Like, okay, yeah, if you like SQL, it gives you a little more speed for your 100 data points by a couple nanoseconds, maybe even a millisecond. But man, if we're talking about 50,000 employees and 10 million customers, those nanoseconds and milliseconds add up very quickly. So it does make a difference, and it takes a decent sized server farm just to hold the company database. So enterprise scale stuff. So a lot more important. Let's look at how we tie our Java program into it. So the first thing is, I'm going to minimize this because obviously after we do stuff from our program, oh, that was the correct thing. I'll get that out of the way. After we do stuff from our program, we want to go over back to that GUI and see what we did to the database. So I'm going to start a new project. Again, since this is a classroom example, At the beginning of the semester, I started out with ants, and there's fewer folders to click around. I figure y'all will probably be clicking through those folders. Maven is the upgraded version, so you probably, the source code's the same source code goes into either one, and this will be the first place where there's a difference between them. Because I'm still going to be clicking through between folders, I'm going to go with ant, and I'm also going to generate a random Maven project to show what to put in your POM file, because you'll need that if you're using Maven. But since I will probably be clicking through folders well, probably not clicking through folders tonight, but what is it, Thursday? It's Tuesday, when we're continuing our discussion on connecting Java to a MySQL database. I will probably click through folders. I'll do it in an Ant project, but Maven is the upgraded version of Ant. And there is something you'll need to type, so I need to generate one so that I can show y'all what to do if it doesn't happen automatically. Hopefully it'll happen automatically. Or if you want, the source code is exactly the same, and it might automatically install it. So let's go with MySQL access or connection. That sounds like a good name. I'll call it MySQL connection. Seems a reasonable, meaningful name. Your main class and stuff. And the first thing we have to worry about is there are a lot of options in databases out there. And in order to connect to a database, we need a library that specifically knows that database. And with all the options, when they made Java, they had the option of either include all of them or include none of them. They went with none of them for the default installation. They're all part of the official Java language, but we need to go get the library. In particular, they've already wrote the code, compiled it, and built the jar file. So we need that jar file. That's what the library is. All of the packages that they built up that know about MySQL, pre-built objects and interfaces and enums and that stuff we were talking about in the last module. They already built that for us, compiled it, put it in a jar file. That's the library we need. So there's something new that is different on a Windows machine than the others. Really, all we need to do is download that file. But when I searched for it the other day getting ready, so we go over to Google and search for we need the Java database connector, JDBC. So we need the MySQL JDBC driver. Google just finished that. I usually just type in the first two words and it finds it fine. But Java database connector, and then whatever database you're looking for. And for some reason, instead of downloading it directly, I even went around to Oracle's site and tried to download it right from Oracle. I had to put a different search in, but it's still downloaded in installer. All we need is a jar file. It tries to download everything. Go ahead and both MySQL web official site and Oracle's official site both have the installer for Windows. If you're on a Linux or a Mac, you should be able to just download the folder and we'll pull the folder out of it. But for some reason, on Windows, I haven't seen it before this year, but it only comes in an MSI file, so it will automatically run that MSI file and it will automatically put the files we need in programs x86. So then we'll copy those over to somewhere. We can use them there. That's a good spot for them on our machine, but only on our machine if it's an installer. So that I'm finding that really weird. I don't know why they did it, but we have to use the installer. So choose your system. from the dev MySQL developer page, the official one. It's all abbreviated, as you probably would have expected. Dev.mysql.com. I'm on a Windows machine, so go to download page and just choose whichever one you want. Did I click something wrong? I don't know why it's giving me 32-bit installers. I have the 64-bit installer, so it probably just there's probably a cookie or something that remembers I already downloaded the 64-bit. It's like, oh, if you're back, you might want the 30-bit. So download the appropriate one for your system, which should probably be a 64-bit machine. If you only see the 32-bit, that'll be fine. And you'll get over there where it looks like a login page, but if you look down at the bottom, you'll notice it says, no thanks, I don't want an account, just give me the files. You can just click that. And this page is nice. You'll see the actual signature from Oracle and the look. Yeah, you'll see the actual Oracle signature, know who you're downloading from and stuff. So now there's this MSI installer. So we'll go ahead and run this, and you can probably install the whole thing. There is a way to select just certain things, but if you just run the installer, it should be there. Oh, I guess it's installing all of MySQL. Okay, so I saw a page like this. I guess it's a nice fancy installer. I probably should have uninstalled the version I had from getting ready. But all we really need is if you're looking at this page, something like this page right here, you'll see this one, MySQL connectors. So all you really need is the MySQL /J is the Java connector. So just grab that and move it over, which I can't do because I already put it on mine. But when you highlight one, the little arrow will turn green and it puts over here. That's all you need to install. So just install that Java connector. Extend MySQL connectors, and then the /J, unless you just want the C# one or the Python one, you can come back and get those later, or the C++ one, or the Oracle database one. For us tonight, just grab the /J one. I think I picked the newest one. I just went to the top of the list and clicked that arrow turns green, and then you can just go through the installed steps. But it apparently remembers that I did that. So I'm going to cancel out of here. Yes, cancel out of here. And after you run that installer, where it installs is on your C drive. Unless you changed it, obviously you can. If you put it somewhere else, you know where it's at. But by default, it'll be under Program Files x86. And there's a MySQL folder. And there's the connector for Java 8. The folder. And inside of that folder, there's a bunch of stuff, but there's also a jar file, an executable jar file. You might remember from before the break when we did that finished software example. When we're done and we build the final product, what we build is a jar file. So this is on C drive. Be okay for our computers, but we probably want you to put that somewhere else because we don't have much control over that on other people's machines. So what I'm going to do I need to put this somewhere where it'll be around, convenient to use. So I'm going to copy that and it could put it right in the project. That's a good place to keep track of it. But those things get updated separately from the rest of the programming language and everything else. So if the people that you wrote the application for update their database without updating their Java, you'll need to change that library. That's another reason why it's not included. So I usually, instead of putting it in the project, I'll put it somewhere where it'll end up on GitHub. And then I can just do a selection structure and all that with the final installer. But I keep it separate from the project, but it's still on the same repository, so it's easy to find and stuff. But that library might need updated separately. I guess for our purposes, I will go ahead and put it in here. I'll go into MySQL connection and I'll just stick it at the top level. But as long as you know where it is, and the C drive on your computer is probably not the best thing because you're probably writing software for somebody else. So you would need it on the C drive on their computer, not on your own computer. That's why I find the installer for it really, really strange. That's new this year. Always before we would just download a file, download a folder that had a whole bunch of things in there and we'd choose which one we wanted. But somebody at Oracle decided that it should be an installer now. But once you grab that file out of there, put it somewhere where you can get to it, and you'll need to keep it around because the default installation of Java doesn't have that. So whenever you send somebody this software, you need to make sure and include that. And that is the first step for a library that's not in there. Open source stuff, we'll be able to get that jar file. And if we extended some open source software, like we added some extensions to NetBeans, the core, I guess the core, I'll say core because it's not really a kernel. So that core part that makes it NetBeans that we extended on would come in a series of jar files. So we would need those along with the libraries to use and stuff. JavaFX will be the same way. It's for JavaFX, there's a whole bunch. There's 19 available, but usually there's 6 that we're going to use, except for really, really, really random obscure things. But there will be up to 19 jar files. It's probably 6. Unless it's a really random obscure thing, you're not going to need to get into the other 13. But maybe you need 1 or 2 things. So maybe 8 8 jar files or 10 jar files, or however many you need. You would just grab those files and put them somewhere where you can find them. And now we need to tell our IDE that there's a new library, a new Java library we want to use. So before I start building this, I'm going to go to Tools. There's lots of places we can get to it. And under not options, about halfway down, you will see libraries. So tools and then libraries. And any IDE is going to have something similar. It's just the buttons are in a different place. So we go in libraries, and then we get this GUI that has a list of all of our libraries, all of the libraries that NetBeans knows about. Oh, whoops. Let me remove that one. Oh, this remove button. There we go. That was from the test case the other day. And if I tried to call one MySQL now, it would cause a problem. So there's all the libraries, but you'll see there's, if I go to IMS, there's not a MySQL anymore. There was a second ago, but I meant to delete that before class. So nothing about MySQL, so I need to create a new library. Same thing on anything we import. There was a question about Java FX the other day. The difference is in an upcoming step. There would be a Java FX library, only one. There's at least 6 jar files, somewhere between 6 and 19 jar files, but it's very unlikely you'll need more than 6. It was really, really obscure, random, off the wall things if you need any of those other 13. The 6 basic ones. But we put those jar files into a library. A library, as far as physical building, library has lots of books. So think of it that way. A library has lots of shelves with different books organized and category by them, right? So that's what the library is here. The library has lots of jar files, and the jar files have lots of packages, and the packages have lots of objects. Hopefully, you can make a visualization in that training to a physical library with shelves and books and fiction sections and nonfiction sections and all the categorizations. So there's sort of a correspondence, which you will want to keep in mind when you're making your own libraries, how it's organized and things like that. So this one, I would call it MySQL. Class libraries is fine. Okay, yeah. If the option says anything other than class libraries, go back to class libraries. I believe the default only has class libraries. So MySQL one. What would there be other than class libraries? It has a bunch of objects. There might be some finished versions where it, instead of classes, it already has pre-made objects. But that's getting into factories and more very advanced things like what the Spring framework uses, which is a step beyond even factories. So for us, at least not for now, class libraries. But if you ever need the other ones, it'll make sense. It's like, oh, I need a factory. So you'd need a factory. You would need object libraries where the classes have already been instantiated. There's our library, but you'll notice on the class path here, library class path, there's no folders. There's nothing in it. So we need to add the jar folder or folders for other things like Java FX. Whoops, that's not where I was going. That means projects. And I put it at the top level here. So you just want to make sure you can find it. So I put it at the top level of the project. Great. Now navigate to that jar folder, jar file. A jar file is the equivalent of a .exe executable file, which is actually a zipped folder. It's a zipped folder full of compiled files, but we treat it as a file, not a folder. And for whatever one you're importing, just give it a name, add all the jar files, and then hit OK. So NetBeans knows about that. Now we just need to add it to our project. So come over to the projects thing, and when you right click on that, real quick, if you look at the services tab under databases, you'll see that NetBeans has already found a database on your system, but it's disconnected because the database is running, but they haven't told NetBeans how to connect to it, how it can connect to MySQL database again, or at least not in the currently open project. Different drivers. Oh, it looks like I already had a driver there, but we'll go through this anyway. So NetBeans knows about our database and other things. Knows about servers, knows about spots on the cloud. I don't have any set up. I should probably connect some to those. I mentioned Docker the other day. NetBeans already knows about Docker. Docker made a big change to the software development industry. Y'all definitely want to start looking into Docker. It does lots and lots of things, and does wonderful things, and it's expanding every day. But people knew a change was coming, and once Docker was created, everybody knew what that change was going to be, and it all focused that way. That's for later in the semester. For us, back over in our projects, if you click on the project name, or I think anywhere, you just need to be able to get to properties. I usually just go ahead and click on the top level of the project to make sure it's the right spot. Right click, and at the bottom of the menu is properties. And in this dialog, you'll notice the second option on the left navigation is for libraries. And we have two libraries that are two options of where to put libraries. Do the libraries need to be in the module path or the class path? The module path is where the compiler looks. The class path is where the Java virtual machine looks. So if your stuff in the jar file is already compiled and that's objects that you're going to use directly, and you don't need to compile them into your project, like yours, if they're ready to go, right? Already a bunch of compiled objects, you just need to look at them. You would add them to the class path. So, like if we wanted to use something from our example last week, we'd add it to the class path. For this library, we're going to actually use it. We're going to create instantiate objects in our code out of that. So we need to tell the compiler about it. So that's the module path. So we'll add to the module path a new library, add library, and then choose that one we just created. So now it should know about MySQL objects. Yeah, I'll show this real quick. Every IDE will have that. Every place you can type Java code will have that. The buttons are obviously in different places. And if you just like to do it all in the terminal yourself, just use a basic text editor and then open the terminal and compile everything manually yourself. That's where module path goes. So like here, change directory to documents / it means projects, change directory, find SQL connection, change directory at the source. There we go. So here I am where the Java files are. Well, I'm outside of any of the folders. If I was in that folder and ready to compile them, I'd call the compiler from here. So the Java compiler, and then instead of just putting the file name, right, file.java, I need to add a parameter before compiling that says where to look for that module. And the parameter is -- module.path, which I think was right. And then that argument goes in for the parameter, the path to the module. And if you need more than one, if you have modules in multiple places, it needs to be a string. and then a semicolon, and then the next one. So C colon users slash string and wherever it is. But they all go in as a string. Whoops, that would cause an error. They all go in as a string, a semicolon between them, and no spaces. Just out of habit, I did that at first, and that would cause an error. So as a string, separated, delimited by semicolons, and no spaces, it's a whole lot easier to let the IDE handle that for us. But that's what you would put there, and then, so look there for the module, and then compile file.java, or whatever it's called. If you like to do all that stuff by hand. It's a whole lot easier to do it in the thing. It's probably where you would have guessed, right? To add that library, we go to properties. Oh, there's a libraries tab. And really the question is whether it adds to the module path or the class path. We're going to use those objects. We're going to instantiate new versions of those objects in our file. That means it goes in the module path because the compiler needs to know where it is. If the objects are already instantiated or will be automatically instantiated by something that we're not compiling, automated processing in the background, then it's the Java virtual machine that needs to know about it. But yeah, libraries added to the module path, and that's anytime we need to add some other stuff, that's how we do that. So I was just looking at the clock, and things went long the other day, didn't they? I don't want to run long, so what I'm going to do, we will talk about all this stuff soon, but here is the example that from getting ready. So I'll do a really quick pass, give you all these files so you can look at them and write code, because that's how we write code anyway, right? Talk about things, and most of what I'm talking about is I'm hoping it's going to be notes that are sticking in your mind. And then we will get into, and then we will do it next Tuesday. So if you have time over the weekend, I would like for you to practice, because obviously it's an active subject we learn by doing. I'll make sure there's time to do it. And we went all the way till 7:50 the other night. And there's 3 classes. We will continue. So we will continue there and rebuild these files that I'm getting ready to give you, plus more. But the basic idea, is that right? Yeah. So the basic idea is we need to create an object to handle each one of our rows. Right? Our database table, we go in the people table. Actually, I want to look at structure of people. Each row or record in our table has an ID, which is an integer, which is auto incremented. So when we insert data, we don't want to touch it, but when we retrieve data, we want it. So we'll need a spot for an integer, a name, which is text or a string, an age, which is an integer, and a town, which is a text. So the first thing we want to do is make a object that just matches that. So we set up those data fields, and then everything else is completely that generated code like we've been seeing. Alt insert, and then insert every possible option of constructor, getters, setters, string, equals, and you probably want to implement the compare to interface, so you can go ahead and set up comparable. I said that backwards. Implement comparable interface, so you can go ahead and set up your compare to method. And then we have something that represents each row of data, which They look very, very different to us, right? A row in a MySQL table doesn't look like anything like a Java object. But remember, what goes in our text file is not what the CPU runs. It is the exact opposite of a coincidence that we use the same word for them. They look different in our text file. And I'll leave it at that. So we need to represent it in our Java code. And then we need to connect to the database. So to connect to the database, we need to know, where is it? Where is it? Who are we? Because the database is going to have security. Got to have permission to access that database. Usually the database administrator will set up not just the human accounts, but specific computer accounts. Actually, do I have any here? Let me jump back over here. It's on a different one. Yeah, I'll point at that. I'll open up the one on my Ubuntu server, my local Ubuntu server, and because I've been doing this little thing lately where I've been making small social media sites. So I thought that maybe people would like their own social media site. So instead of that big one or like a Facebook group, you and 10 of your friends have your own social media site. Nobody else knows about it or anything. I've been making those sites lately. So I have some databases there. And there, to access those particular databases, there is no human access. There's only a machine username and a machine password. So who's using the machine? Where's the database at? What's the user? And a lot of times we'll separate our machine users and our human users. There's going to be both, and the password. And if you have not changed the default for MySQL, the username is root. And the password is the empty string. So you do need quote marks, but nothing inside of the quote marks. That's the default if you haven't changed it. And if you have changed it, hopefully you know what it is. So those are the three things we need to connect. Probably put them in a constructor, so we pass them right in. And here's the insert query like we had over here. It's kind of a mess. You probably want to build that up over several lines. We'll do a couple of those. Insert name, age, town. It's basically the same thing I copied and pasted over here. And then what we're going to do is we want to try to connect to the database. We'll scroll up here and notice the only import is java.sql.asterisk, the wildcard selector. So everything from the java.sql package. And that is one of the packages inside that JDBC we just grabbed. Hopefully that all makes sense. Because, yeah, I don't want to take all night. So I'm just going to give you this code and then we'll do it in detail coming up soon. Insert the queries. Y'all can look at the code. Hopefully that makes sense. And we don't have a new connection object. What we have to do is we have to go to our JDBC, the driver manager, and get a connection using that URL, username, and password. Hopefully that makes sense. I didn't put any comments here, so that's why I wanted to make sure I talk about this, is just giving you the code. If I would have anticipated, this, I would have put a lot of comments in here. And once we have, that gets us our connection object. Then once we have a connection object, we need to create a statement. Statement is that connection and create statement with an empty constructor. You can probably take a guess at what the not empty constructor looks like, but we'll see that in class. I didn't type it here. I only did one insert query. But then on the next line, we're expecting an integer result. Well, I'll start on this side. I think by now everybody knows computers run our instructions right to left. Like when I'm talking, I always say semicolon is end of instruction, but actually semicolon is next instruction. X equals X plus 1. We know that line works correctly, and doesn't enter an infinite loop because the right-hand side runs before the left-hand side. So computers run this side first. This will happen, and then it will assign the right-hand side. So our statement, we went to execute and update. Execute update query. So the word query would probably make more sense. There's the way we spell everything out in Java. Execute an update query, and the type of update we want is an insert query. And insert, I did it one string at a time. I usually do it one string at a time and just run through a loop there. And notice that it is a try catch, so kind of like file reading. We might not be able to connect to the database. Maybe somebody bumped F12 on their laptop and the Wi-Fi is down. So even though the database is there, we have all in the program is perfectly debugged. Somebody bumps the F12 button, they're going to shut off the Wi-Fi on their laptop and then no longer be able to access the database. Different things happen, so it's got to be a try catch. Execute an update query, execute update to update, and not update query. That works because we're not running an update query. We need to execute update for all our queries. Execute update a select query, and update means put the application and the database in the same state. Right? Things change, so execute update means realign them. So execute update, and what we're going to realign is run this insert query. And then again, there's multiple things open, so remember to close them in the opposite order you open them. Open a connection, then open a statement. So then close a statement and close a connection, because if you mix up that order, it will cause a big crash and leave things open. And there is a security breach that the developer has to deal with. We will talk about that soon. Query SQL injection. It's really, really, really easy to avoid, but the programmer has to avoid it. That's why it's such a big deal in security, because that's not one that the cybersecurity experts can do something about. Only the programmer that wrote the application can avoid a SQL injection attack, and they can only do it while writing the program. So that we'll talk about that. But as far as getting initial practice, don't worry about it. Just get your query together and then pass the query into the statement.execute update method. Then close your connection, because you don't want to leave you don't want to leave the database wide open. And try. Oh, you see that's the end of the object. Other methods can go down below. I just did the one. They all follow suit. Just write a different. If you know SQL, you'll see it's just a string. But it's a mess because that string has to be built up with a bunch of variables and quote marks, and look at the end there. We need a semicolon for SQL, and we need a semicolon for Java. Both of them have the end of instruction character. I just mentioned that actually it reads right to left, so technically that's next instruction, but because where it falls in line, it doesn't make a lot of sense to think that when we're typing our code. It makes more sense for us to think end. But we need, both languages require a semicolon, a string. So it's only one deep here, so you could nest a single quote mark inside of there. They're interchangeable in SQL, but not in Java. And I don't nest quote marks. So even if it's in a double quoted string like this, and I want a single quote mark, I still use an escape sequence. It's like one of those things, kind of like those in the if blocks that are only one line long. We don't need the curly braces, but leaving them off often causes more problems than that shortcut saves time, right? It's a shortcut that saves us 2 key presses. To use a single quote mark instead of an escape sequence saves us 1 key press, and it could lead to big issues. So much better just always use an escape sequence. That's one of my biggest tips from years and years of programming is if the shortcut saves you 1 key press, do not take that shortcut. It won't be worth it. Just press that key the 1 time to make it an escape sequence instead of a nested quote mark. And build up your query. That was an error I was intending to throw in the lecture. Y'all know by now I like to throw the error messages in the classroom to see how to fix them. All of the queries are going to be the same. Just build up your Java, your SQL query. And we're going to do this again on Tuesday. This whole module is about MySQL. So I just thought you all might want to do stuff. So now to connect it, this is the big one to talk about. Well, username and password, I already said what they are. And a bunch of those record objects we created, the ones that match our table, the rows in our table, that's our data, loop through and call. Oh, and then that connector object, one of those. So we just loop through and call that add data, that insert query, that insert method we made. That part's probably fairly straightforward. So this is the URL. Somebody tell me what : / means. Have you heard this before? : / means something very specific.
Isn't it the path?
So a slash is part of the path. The : / right? We see it in our web address. We used to see it all the time in SDEV 153 back when the course used file transfer protocol. And we know about it from websites, hypertext transfer protocol. I come over to the web address and hit Alt-D. There's no protocol here. We just access the local machine. But what's missing from what would normally be in there? Okay, normal web address. I go to say my Ivy. I push Alt-D like I'm going to copy it. It starts with protocol. So : / means protocol. : / tells the computer that the words before it are the protocol to use. That's a very important thing. So if you're on file transfer protocol, FTP : //. If you want to access through secure shell, SSH : //. RDP : //. Telnet : //. HTTP : //. means protocol. So anytime we're accessing other machines, we have to say, and we need to say how we're going to access each other. : / does it. So here we're using the Java database connector, MySQL subset protocol. So Java database connectivity protocol is what that first part says. And we do need to include which one we're on, because the port number makes a difference. On MySQL, it's 3306, which is what's happening over here. Localhost is our address, right? That's taking the place of 127.0.0.1. So a human readable version of an IP address. : just a colon and then a number means port. How are we connecting to this? So MySQL is a standard port, that's common enough, but that other one I mentioned, OrientDB, the NoSQL database I really like, It wasn't my favorite, but that's gonna be my recommendation because of what the DDMS 110 class is supposed to cover. If the class was a mess, which the constructors statewide know that that class has become a mess, and it is. We're working on cleaning it up, but this one's not as common. MariaDB isn't as popular as MySQL, so we have to actually say what port it's on. So IP address, colon, port number. So we have a whole bunch of things in our URL, and they all mean things that you will see in different places, right? Lots of protocols we can connect to different machines on. Lots of port numbers, and we can make up the ports. 0 through 1024 are reserved. We can't use those. Some MySQL uses 3306. You probably don't want to use that one because that's a well-known one. Or if you need to secure your database, you probably want to take it off 3306 and put it somewhere where people aren't just going to guess. That's the default. We can always change the default. So protocol, and we indicate that protocol name : / IP address : port, and then the slash. So it's top level domain. If you're used to web addresses, top level domain / subfolder / subfolder / file, that sort of thing, right? Everybody's seen that before. Our port number goes next to the top level domain. This top level domain tells us what server to go to. So go to this server, connect on port 3306, and then start going through the folders that are there. And the one written here, it's into the prepare folder, which is the name of where I put my practice, the name I made up when I made the practice one. You're going to have that, so I'm just going to put folder. Hopefully that you'll be able to remember that when you look at these files. That's the big one. We are going to look at this in detail on Tuesday. If you want to wait till then, we'll talk about it. But if you want to go ahead and get some practice with that, we've seen all the pieces. There just wasn't time to really. We ran long the other day. We don't need to run long every day. So I will save these and stick these on GitHub. Step 200. Add a file. Upload. Oh, whoops. I need a folder to put it in. Okay, create a folder. Pre-example _ MySQL / scratch .txt. Okay, so there's a folder on our course GitHub, SDEV 200, or my username, Francis-Chris5, and SDEV 200 -fall 2022, the pre-example, and then we'll get into our actual example Tuesday and talk about these things in more detail. And that's what was going to happen anyway, because review is useful for the learning process. Oh, well, look at this. Am I going to work? Oh, well, that's annoying. I'll do it this way then. That gives you a stripped down bare minimum to look at if you want to start playing around with it. Because it's an active subject we learn by doing. That's the best way to do it. More talking about that on Tuesday. It's only 25 minutes early. I will make it a point to have a short class on Tuesday because we've had some long classes lately. And a short class to do where we have lots of time. As always, I will be sitting here until 8:50, our scheduled block of time. In case any questions come my way, please use our time productively. Your calendar should have this block of time marked off for learning IT, so please spend it productively, or relax. I know everybody's really, really busy, so 25 minutes to relax is productive. It doesn't seem like it, but if you take a few minutes to relax, you'll be more productive afterwards than if you were exhausted trying to work through that 25 minutes. That throws a lot of people off, and a lot of people get that one wrong. So if you need extra time here to just sit on the couch and stare at the ceiling and do nothing to relax your mind for a moment before you do more stuff, a little relaxation is more productive than if you would have skipped it and tried to continue doing stuff while exhausted. Keep that in mind, because so many people get that wrong. Otherwise, any questions for this evening, we'll pick up here on Tuesday and sort of reiterate. Well, go over the Java part in more detail. We saw it, the quick pass. Okay, I assume silence means no questions. You'll have a great weekend. I'll see you on Tuesday.
Have a good weekend.
You too.